All right, so we are going to go over how to complete your conductivity lab. So we're going to build a circuit so that we can test conductors and insulators. So you will need your light bulb, your battery, and the aluminum foil that came in your kit. So now we're going to need more of this aluminum foil later. So we're not going to use it all up today. So what you're going to do first, you will also need a pair of scissors and some tape. Now, hopefully you have tape. If you don't, then I'm going to show you at the end of the video how you can do this without tape. Okay, so we're going to do the tape version first. So you're going to cut 3 strips of foil, and they don't need to be very thick. They only need to be about like the width of your thumb. Okay, so you're going to cut 3 strips like that. Okay, so you should have 3 strips of foil. So now we're going to use these strips. So these are going to act as our wires in our circuit. So we're going to tape these to our cardstock in a circuit. So we're going to take the first strip and we are going to tear it in half so that I have 2. Okay. Then we're going to tape those 2 along one of the long sides of our cardstock. Now, you're going to want to create a gap here. You don't want the gap to be too big, though. You want the gap to be small enough that when you go to plug in your battery to your circuit, that the terminals can touch either side of the gap. So your gap should not be any bigger than the space between your 2 terminals. Okay, see that? So I want my gap to be pretty small, but you do need to have a gap. You've got to have a gap there, but you just want it to be really small. So I'm going to place those where I want them, and then I'm going to use some tape. I'm using green tape just so that you guys can see what I'm doing. Any kind of tape is fine. And like I said, if you don't have tape, then just bear with me or skip ahead to the end of the video, and I'll show you how to do this experiment without any tape. So I'm going to tape these strips down. I'm just going to tuck my extra tape underneath. I want to straighten out this edge. So remember, your gap needs to be very little so that your battery can bridge that gap in a little bit. Okay, so there's one side of our circuit. Okay, so pause the video here if you need more time to get caught up. If you have overlap foil, that's okay. You can just tuck it under. It's not really going to hurt anything. All right, so now we need to make the left and the right side of our circuit. So we're going to take another strip. We're going to tear that one in half or cut it in half so that I have 2 smaller strips. And then these are going to be my sides. So I'm going to lay the foil on top of the bottom. So make sure your corners that you have the foil overlapping, because that electricity is going to travel through the foil. And remember, it can't travel if there are any gaps. Now, we're going to be closing this gap. But if we have gaps here, we don't have anything to close that. So we need to make sure that we have these overlapping. And I'm just going to place some tape here and here at my corners. Okay, so we've got 2 sides to our circuit now. And you can pause the video here if you need more time. Make sure everything is nice and tight. Make sure your foil pieces are touching at the corners. Otherwise, your circuit's not going to work. So we just need one last piece to our circuit. So just like we made a gap down here, we're also going to leave a gap up here because this is where we are going to plug in our light bulb. So your gap up here can be a little bit larger because the light bulb has quite a bit of wire attached to it, so it can cover a pretty big space. So that gap can be as much as you want. So I'm going to take my strip, cut it in half, and then you'll notice you have way too much aluminum foil here. See, got way too much. So I'm just going to fold both of these in half. You can fold them to whatever length you would like. I think almost folding them in half should just about do it. Okay, so I'm going to have a pretty big gap there, but that'll still work with my light bulb. I'll still be able to reach the light bulb across the gap. Because I'm going to use the light bulb to close the gap up here, and then the battery to close the gap down there. So I'm going to tape these corners again. And again, make sure your aluminum foil is touching at the corners. So we can't have it, we don't want it like that. We want to make sure that the aluminum foil is touching. Okay. So once you have your corners all in place, then you can go ahead and plug in your light bulb. Now, before we start with the light bulbs, I want to caution you because these light bulbs are just little Christmas lights. They cannot take a whole lot of power or wear, so you've got to be kind of gentle with them because this is the battery we had to use with these kits because it's the only kind that will work with a paper circuit like this. But these batteries have a lot of power. And sometimes too much power for these light bulbs to take. So it will quickly burn them out if you are lighting the light bulb over and over again, or if you're leaving it lit up for a long time. So you just need to keep that in mind, and I'll remind you of that along the way. But be aware that these do burn out pretty easily if you're not really gentle with your use of the battery. So we're going to tape the light bulb down. So I have my exposed copper wires here. So I'm just going to make sure that that is touching my aluminum foil, and I'm going to tape it down on either side. You want to make sure it's nice and tight. So I'm going to make sure my wires are overlapping the foil and tape that down. So now I just about have a closed circuit. So my gap here has been closed because it's going to travel through the foil, into the wire, into the bulb, and out, and come back around. So my circuit is just about complete. I just need to add some power. Now again, before we add the power, I want to caution you. We're going to plug the battery in to test, but then I'm going to immediately take it off. I'm not going to just leave my light bulb on. I'm just going to test it quickly and then take my battery off because I don't want to burn out my light bulb. Okay, and they can't take a whole lot. So we got to be very gentle with them. So now I'm going to take my battery. So in a minute, I'm going to be testing conductors and insulators. But before I can test conductors and insulators, I have to make sure that my circuit is a working closed circuit. So I've got to test that first. So I'm going to go ahead and close this gap by taking my terminals, turning them upside down, and then touching them to either side of the foil. And you'll notice whenever I touch it, and I'm just touching it quickly and taking it off, that my circuit does work. So my circuit works, and I know that because when I plug in my battery, the light bulb lights up. So that's good. So I'm in good shape so far. Now to test objects. Okay, so I'm going to keep my battery handy because I'm going to need it again. Now you're going to take out several objects. You're going to take out your cardboard, plastic spoon, wooden stick, the piece of styrofoam, the cotton string, and then you had all these items in your little baggie. So you can go ahead and dump out all of those items. So we're going to test all these things for whether they're a conductor or an insulator. So I'm going to test them, and then I'm going to make a pile here of conductors and insulators. So the way that we're going to test them is we're going to take each item and we're going to lay it on top of one of the sides of our gap. So I just took the cardboard and I laid it on top of the aluminum foil. Okay. So now I'm going to try to make my circuit work again, doing the same thing I did earlier when I tested it, except now I'm going to lay one terminal on top of the cardboard and one terminal on top of the foil. So I'm pushing it down so that one side of my battery is touching the cardboard, one side of my battery is touching the aluminum foil, and my light bulb is not lighting. So that tells me that electricity is not getting out of the battery and getting into the foil. If it was, my light bulb would light up, but it's not. So that tells me that this item is stopping the electricity from flowing. So that would make this an insulator. So I'm going to make a pile down here. Okay. Now I'm going to try the penny. So I'm going to lay it on the foil. And I'm going to do my battery. And I'm going to touch one terminal to the penny and one terminal to the foil. And again, when your light bulb lights, you want to quickly take the battery off. You just want to test it very quickly so you don't burn out your bulbs. Okay, so the light bulb is lighting. So that tells me that electricity is leaving the battery and traveling through the penny to be able to get around the circuit and light the bulb. So that would make the penny a conductor. So I'm going to put that in this pile. So you're going to go ahead and test all the objects in that way. So I'm going to do that now. And I only need to test one paper clip. I have several paper clips. I only need to test one. Okay. Oh, and my yarn. Okay, so I've tested all my objects. So the wooden stick, the styrofoam, string, glass marble, eraser, and cardboard were all insulators. They did not allow the light bulb to glow. While my paper clip, penny, lead weight, and iron nail did allow the light bulb to glow, so they are conductors. So that is all that you have for this experiment. Now, if you didn't have tape, okay, so if you don't have tape, because the wires on these light bulbs are so long, you actually have everything you need right here to make a circuit. So we don't actually need this. We can just make a circuit with our light bulb and our battery. It's just a little bit more difficult to hold everything together, but it will work. So if you don't have tape at home, or if your aluminum circuit was not working, then you have this option as well. But you have to be especially careful with this option, because now with a shorter circuit, there's going to be more power surging through this light bulb. So it's going to be even more likely to burn out if you're not very, very gentle with it and very careful. So the way that you create a circuit, if you're going to use both sides of your battery, you've got two wires here and then the light bulb already attached. So I'm just going to touch quickly the wires to each side of the terminal, and that makes a circuit. Okay, and you can see my light bulb is lighting up. So the way that you test insulators and conductors is you're just going to have to lay each item on top of one of the terminals and then touch the wire to the top of that item as well as the other terminal. Okay, so again, penny is a conductor, but cardboard, whoops, you may need to cut, if you're doing it this way, you might need to cut the cardboard to make it smaller so it will sit on top of the terminal. And so that is not lighting, so that's an insulator. Okay, so you can test all the objects like that as well.